We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, wondering where this video was this week, here to remind you guys that this is the one segment per week that it will be exclusively on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So be sure and check that out. If you're already here, welcome in. Do a solid toss a like on this video. All that good stuff. Consider subscribing, of course. But now you're doing all those things because we're just going to continue to bring you guys value. And that includes bringing on some of the best guests in the entire industry. One of those people, of course, joins me again today. He's the director of DFS at 4for4 Football, my good buddy, TJ Hernandez. Welcome back to the program, my friend. How was week 9 for you?
Week 9 was good. I mean, anytime you're in the black in DFS and NFL, it's a good week. So it was, we got Josh Allen rolling back on track. So that's always positive for me. And then when Josh Allen makes me money, it's even better.
Yeah, man, that's the best when the plays that you've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks come through, even though there's been a little bit of Josh Allen heat over the couple weeks before that, which is a little bit aggressive relative to, like, people are just basically saying he's right there with Russell Wilson for the MVP, and these Kyler people just swoop right in, and everyone forgets about Josh Allen, man. So nice to see him get back on track against Seattle last week. I feel like we've had a little bit of a theme going through this. Like, every time you're on, we talk a little bit about game selection. So one of the things that I was looking at this week is I'm trying to get back into playing some of the smaller slates overall. And normally, I used to play a lot of small slates, actually. Normally, the structures on DraftKings were significantly better on the small slates than on the large slates. That is not the case anymore. Some of these small slate DraftKings contests are extremely poor in comparison to FanDuel. FanDuels are a little bit smaller, but I like that anyway. Yeah. So I'm actually kind of interested in playing the 1 p.m. and some of the afternoon slates over on FanDuel. I know you're playing on a bunch of different sites, slates, all that stuff. You notice that about DraftKings, though?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it just in our weekly research. You and I kind of talked throughout the week, and even whatever slate it's in, FanDuel's been offering some really nice structures this year, and that's why we go through it every week. Like, there are subtle changes in the percentage of people that are paid, how the money's being spread out across the people that are paid, and that really has a direct impact on your bottom line. So, I mean, you and I go through that every week. I post about it on Twitter as much as possible, and not even just the structure, but I mean, FanDuel is a higher variance site just because it is half PPR. It really favors touchdowns and game script more. So I think it's kind of a double whammy. And then I actually talked about this on the DFS MVP this week. Even if you have, whether you've played small slates before or not, this is a really interesting week to do it because they've split the games up, 5 early window, 6 late window. So, like, that's kind of big enough. Like, 5 or 6 games is where I feel really comfortable. I'm still kind of in my main slate strategy mindset. When you get to 4 or less, things kind of change a little bit in terms of strategy as far as lineup building and ownership. But I think it's a really good week to do it, if for nothing else, because of the way the slates are split up this week.
Yeah, it's a great point. Just looking at it, and we actually get a ton of afternoon games, which should be really fun. So definitely take advantage of late swap. We'll continue to say that. You guys will continue to not do it. But I feel like I should be saying that each and every week. Now, the task at hand, TJ, week 10, locks of the week. We're going to give one at each position per usual. So at quarterback, we were just talking about him, Kyler Murray. He's $8K. He's very expensive, but it is the big matchup between Arizona and Buffalo. It's going to be me versus Leone on the tilt space. I know you're normally a Josh Allen guy, but it sounds like you're on Kyler for DFS purposes.
Yeah, I think you have to be on Kyler for a lot of reasons. Obviously, he is the highest floor quarterback in the league right now. He hasn't had a game under 23 fantasy points. I mean, that's what Aaron Rodgers' weekly averages. That's Kyler's floor right now. He's 8th in the league in rushing, averaging 70 yards per game. Not 8th at quarterback. He's 8th in the league in rushing. Only 7 running backs have more rushing yards than him. So he's giving you almost 2 touchdowns worth of fantasy points on the ground, and then throwing for multiple touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 games. In a game against Buffalo, we know Buffalo can get into some crazy shootouts. We saw them in a game last week with Seattle with 70-something combined points. And obviously, the Arizona Cardinals have the weapons to do that. So you talk about his price, and he's basically what Lamar was last year in terms of, like, are we going to play him? He has that floor. The difference is last year Lamar was priced so much higher, and he was doing things that were in such a different realm relative to all the other quarterbacks. This year, we have 4 or 5 quarterbacks that are putting up like 30 every week. It might not be the same guys, but you get a Josh Allen putting up 30, you get Russ putting up 30, Aaron Rodgers in there putting up 30. So the whole notion of, are you going to pay up for him? It's because if you don't, you're going to go way down in salary. You're not doing that. If you're not paying for him, you're saving $200 to go to Josh Allen. So it just doesn't make sense to get off the high priced quarterbacks. At least like as the way things are set up right now, it's really hard to get away from them.
You hit on it, man. It just feels like almost more than ever, at least in the time that I've been playing DFS, there's just so much more opportunity cost for these elite rushing quarterbacks. I mean, we've been talking about it, you and I, for years, it feels like, and we were getting these guys in like the mid-range pricing, DraftKings, all the community is finally kind of caught up to that a little bit, but we still have had like just these kind of outlier performances. Kyler Murray, also Russell Wilson just having like historical years right now. Last year we had Lamar and Mahomes, so like getting up to that top tier is definitely more of a priority than it used to be. So I'm with you on that. This is kind of like a little bit of a throwback for your running back lock of the week. We have a Stone Min running back this week. He's 4K. Mike Davis. We're going to do this thing all over again. I don't understand. Why did DraftKings move him all the way back to Stone Min? That doesn't feel like completely necessary.
Yeah, I guess they just assumed that Christian McCaffrey was a full go. Like, we knew he was injured on Sunday, and pricing doesn't come out till Monday. But I mean, we're going to notice, or if you've been playing long enough, you're going to feel the difference in that salary floor that we've been talking about all year. It used to be 3,000, now it's 4,000. So he still opens up a ton of salary, but it's still not to the point where you can just do whatever you want. Obviously, you have guys like Duke Johnson who might be values too, but it still isn't that free for all that it used to be. So it's not going to be a situation, I don't think, where just because we have a couple cheap running backs, one of them at the Stone Min, that we're going to have a ton of lineup overlap in cash games. You'll see a lot of Kyler and Mike Davis combos, but then there's a ton of different ways to go after that. But people are going to see Panthers as underdogs. They're going to see Tampa Bay's ranking against running backs. And those are concerns, but at least in cash games, you just don't fade a 20-touch running back that has the potential to see 25% target share at that price. You just eat it and let the chips fall as they may. In tournaments, I think obviously there are some spots where you can get away from him. There's a lot of arguments to be made that he could bust in tournaments, and I kind of just went over those. But in cash games, I just, especially if you are locked on Kyler, I don't see how you don't play Mike Davis.
I'm with you. I think one of my least favorite things that you'll hear people say is like the hashtag free square, but I get it. Like Stone Man guy that we know is just going to have an insane role, insane floor through the air. He hasn't really looked right either in terms of being completely healthy, so that would be a concern. Obviously, this Tampa Bay team is one that Christian McCaffrey has really struggled against in the past, like one of the few that have consistently shut him down. So keep that in mind. But at that point, like, it's the volume, it's the price. Don't really have a whole lot of arguments for me on that one. At wide receiver, you're not going to get many more arguments on this one either. Stephon Diggs has been my guy. Like all year, I've been playing this guy at this basically same price. He's 7,500. He's the third highest weighted opportunity at wide receiver on the slate. Only Terry McLaurin and Devontae Adams have a higher weighted opportunity over the last 4 games. Amazing spot against Arizona, where we know there's going to be a ton of plays, ton of dropbacks on each side. So tell me a little bit more about Stephon Diggs, your wide receiver lock of the week.
Yeah, I think before I say that, anything about Diggs, a lot of people are probably watching and going, how is Devontae not the lock of the week? Devontae's priced way up. He's priced appropriately. And that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about with Mike Davis. In years past, that floor, that $3,000 floor compared to the $4,000 floor, with a $3,000 floor, we just be able to jam Adams, not even think about it. It's a decision now. He's priced high enough where it is a decision. And we know that wide receiver, even Devontae Adams, wide receiver is a high variance position. If your guy's only seeing 10 or 11 targets, that's a lot for a wide receiver, but he might only be touching the ball 8 times. And if he doesn't score, he doesn't pay off his 9,500. So that's why I wanted to mention Diggs as more of a palatable play, at least. You kind of covered what he's doing in terms of volume. And then the Bills are a better team with John Brown on the field. They open up things together more. Diggs and Brown do, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Josh Allen's struggles coincided with John Brown either not playing or being limited. Now, obviously, we're talking about Diggs here, but if a defense can't just zero in on Diggs and Josh Allen is having a better game overall, Stephon Diggs is going to be having better games overall, and I would argue that Stephon Diggs hasn't even scratched what he could be doing in terms of ceiling, which I love. Obviously, we love this game as a tournament play, as we already talked about Kyler's side of it, but Diggs hasn't even been scoring the touchdowns relative to the volume he's getting. So I think that'll normalize a little bit, especially with Josh Allen getting back on track. So Diggs is cash viable, but I'm stacking this game on both sides in tournaments. And actually going back to that point, I think people might think Kyler might draw 20% ownership, which is crazy high for a quarterback. But no matter how you stack this game, I think it's going to be balanced out a little bit because DeAndre Hopkins is coming off a 3-target game. People are going, like Christian Kirk might be in more lineups than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
And there are a lot of wide receiver plays this week in similar pricing range. Those guys are all going to cannibalize each other. People are going to be trying to jam Devontae. So don't think you need to just fade this game because it's going to be the most popular stack of the week. It might be the most popular stack of the week by only marginal percentage points, despite Kyler's high ownership. So just keep that in mind when you're building tournaments this week.
Yeah, to your point on stacks, it's something that I'm trying to be a little bit more thoughtful about based on contest selection. It's something we've talked about with Leone on the tilt space, and he does probably better than anyone right now attack these field sizes of like 350 people to 100 people. He does play the Thunderdome as well, so some smaller field contests like I normally play, but he approaches it quite a bit differently. He thinks that stacking is actually more viable in some of these small tournaments, like full game stacks, because then you only have to get that one thing right. You can leverage the entire field with your one-offs around it. He's a little bit more aggressive with running backs than I am personally, but I guess originally I thought the smaller the field size, the closer you could get to optimal. I think that was actually wrong. The more I think about it, it just gives you a better opportunity to completely leverage the field when ownership is a lot more concentrated in some of these single entries, some of these like higher stakes tournaments where people are just throwing in their optimal. So before we move on to tight end, you have any thoughts on that overall? I'm kind of warming up to Leone's strategy is like overstacking some of these smaller fields.
No, I agree with Leone a lot, and I think there's a really hard inflection point. I don't know exactly what it is. I've always kind of said under 100, and I think there's enough anecdotal evidence to agree with that. Like it's roughly under 100 lineups. You're going to see, if you're playing optimal, you're going to see enough variance among those lineups that you can really still top the field. Once you get into triple digits, like Leone said, like you might only need 180 to top the field, 190 even on DraftKings. But if you can get 105 of that from one game, 110 of that from one game, it's going to be a lot easier. So I don't know if Leone's done work on like anything smaller than 100, but that's always kind of been my cutoff for optimals or cash or however you want to phrase it. I don't like the optimal because my cash often has like some kind of correlation in it, not on purpose. Right. I just don't typically shy away from it.
Yeah, I just think more or less I was like, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I don't care. But I think that just more or less, I think I was thinking about it a little bit differently. Like the larger the field size, the more correlation, the more stacking. That's actually not true. And I know you've kind of dove into like the Millionaire Maker and those really large lottery ticket types of tournaments. You'll see these lineups and it'll be like, wow, that's like kind of gross. It's normally just like a hand picked, like you need the absolute nuts at every slot in your lineup. You're not going to get that from a stack. Like the ceiling doesn't exist in most games. So like I think that's kind of how I've come around to it a little bit. But anyways, tight end. There's one game in particular that has two tight ends kind of in this mid 4K range that I think are super interesting. And it's going to be this Eagles and Giants game. I was a little bit on the Dallas Goedert side. Your tight end lock of the week is Evan Ingram for $300 more. Tell us why.
Well, one, because we don't even know if Matthew Stafford's going to play, so that hurts our TJ Hawkinson hopes. But then Evan Ingram, I mean, he's been a volume monster, at least 9 targets in 3 straight games, and volume can be deceiving because it could be from inflated passing totals, but 2 of those games, he has seen at least a 30% target share. So that volume from a tight end, and a spot where like tight end is just getting ugly ugly faster and faster. We thought it was going to be the super deep pool. Kittle gets injured. Mark Andrews isn't doing Mark Andrews thing. Kelsey not on the main slate. So we kind of have a really thin pool this week. So if you can get that 10 target volume from a tight end against a defense that has really struggled against tight ends, and he's priced down, like not super cheap, but what is he, 45? Yep. It's pretty hard to get away from that.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. Like you said, Philly's actually 32nd in DVOA against tight ends, which is interesting. Dallas Goedert on the other side, if you didn't want to go the Ingram route, ran a route on 74% of the dropbacks. Yeah, 74. Sorry, I missed that note for a second. Yeah. But that's pretty solid as well. I think he's got top 3 upside. I just want to be early on Dallas Goedert, I guess, is the main thing with that one.
Yeah. I think people, like, we do have to remember one thing that Philly's offense has really been predicated on is running 2 tight end sets, running them a lot. And also they haven't had a lot of perimeter help before. Fulgham has obviously popped in. I think it really flew under the radar, even though he scored. Jalen Reagor saw almost 25% of the targets and roughly 25% of the air yards. So I think people, they're going to say, oh, Ertz is out, Goddard's back, Goddard's going to get his 11 targets. I don't know. And Miles Sanders is healthy again. He's a target monster. He hasn't been healthy all year. I don't know if this is going to be as concentrated as an offense as people remember. So I'm on Goddard. I just think people should be aware of the cautions around him.
I like it. Yeah, we'll see what Carson Wentz can do with a full bag of tools. Who knows? Maybe not much from what we've seen from him this year, and I guess a little bit of last year as well. So your defense lock of the week is in this Raiders and Broncos game. The one thing about the Raiders that I was kind of looking into from a betting perspective, 2-7-1 against the spread in their last 10 games, where they've been favored by at least 3 points or more. I do like some pieces of the Broncos, but tell me why you like the DST for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to pricing and to a team being a favorite and them being misvalued. They are the 4th biggest favorite on the main slate, and they're priced down as the 14th defense of the week, down at 2,500. I mean, we see it every single week, and I know it's bad to just be like, oh, it feels like this works every week, but there's something to be said about having that 2,500 and under dollar defense, because there isn't a lot of ways to open up salary on DraftKings. We already talked about it with the raised running back floor. It's not a coincidence that these lineups that can pay down at defense and get one more extra stud than you might usually get, that stud's really going to raise the ceiling of your overall lineup. And Denver hasn't. They've allowed a lot of points to opposing defenses. Luck has been a little haphazard with the ball. When we adjust for schedule, they've allowed the 2nd most points to opposing defenses. Now, with all of that said, the Raiders are one of my favorite offenses to stack, and I like bringing it back with Jerry Jeudy, with Noah Fant. But you don't have to play these together. We can spread it out, and defense isn't if you're playing tournaments, it's not a position that you should really be going all in on anyway. Obviously, in cash, you like that salary savings, but I'm always kind of just picking 4 or 5 defenses and spreading them out relatively evenly anyway.
I'm with you, man. Trying to find a cheap defense to try and get up to guys like Kyler Murray, get to that next tier, definitely makes a lot of sense. And just for the record, like, just because we like a defense, that doesn't mean that we don't like the offensive potential in that game as well. If you're watching this video on YouTube and you haven't checked out my stacks video, definitely check that one out. There is a stack from this game, spoiler alert. So TJ Hernandez, everyone. Yeah, you know him at 4for4 Football, obviously. Follow him on Twitter for a lot of bad beer takes in general, a lot of weird stuff about Eric Decker. He's at TJ Hernandez. Any final thoughts, my man? Thanks for jumping on.
Nah, man, if you guys haven't signed up for 4for4 yet, we do the Discord every week. We're going to try to get a little Joe Holka somewhere involved in something live on 4for4. So if you like Joey, keep an eye on us.
You might be the first person that's called me Joey in months, man, but I appreciate you. All right, man. We'll talk to you very soon. Good luck in week 10.